You're listening to the weekly Dartscast, and now your co-hosts, one-time UK Open Riley's Qualifier participant Alex Moss, and the one-time VIP guest of Barry Hearn, Burton DeWitt. 180!
Hello and welcome to a new episode of the weekly Dartscast, sponsored by Dartwolf. I feel like I've said that probably about 30-40 minutes ago, but just to give you a peek behind the curtain, we are recording the second of our episodes this week back to back. I'm still Alex Moss, and hopefully I've still got with me Burton DeWitt. Are you still there?
Oh, I changed my name by deed poll in the in between. So sorry. How are you, Alex?
Yeah, I'm still doing good, and we are recording these episodes on a Monday just after the World Championship draw and before the last games of the World Cup group stage for England and USA. And I've not mentioned the result on the first episode from the weekly Dartscast derby, a game that I've tried to erase from my memory on Friday. It did finish 0-0, so both players picking up 1 point each. But what did you make of the game on Friday?
Yeah, I think we're both disappointed for different reasons. I'm disappointed in the result because surprisingly, we looked the far superior team. You guys were the better team for the first 15 minutes, and we were the better team the rest of the way. But I can't complain about that performance. It exceeded even my most hopeful and optimistic of expectations. I assume you have a complete opposite view.
Yes, 90 minutes that I'm never going to get back, but I was impressed with the USA team. And when this episode comes out, of course, the group stage will be over, and fingers crossed both of our teams can get through to the knockout stage and maybe meet down the line a little bit further on. But let's get into our chat about the World Championship. As I mentioned, the draw for the PDC World Championship was made a little over an hour ago when we're recording this, and we'll just give our immediate reaction to it. We know the draw for the first round and the potential second round as well. Talk to me about what most caught your eye from the draw earlier tonight.
Yeah, and of course, we'll talk more about this in future episodes as we get closer to the World Championships. So I'll just focus on the first and potential second round ties that drew my eye. And I won't mention all 32 because I'll leave at least one or two for you to discuss. But there's obviously, as we knew there would be, some very tasty ties. And there's barely a seed who I don't think, or I wouldn't be that surprised if they did go out. Obviously, I'm not going to expect that all 32 unseeded players will beat all 32 seeded players in the second round. But there's very few that I think it would be that big of a surprise if they were to pull the upset. And that's because of just how good, pretty much, and not just good, but how well almost all of the Pro Tour qualifiers and many of the international qualifiers have been playing recently. If they come and play their game, they'll have every chance to win. Of those, though, I'll start with the first round ties that I'm most looking forward to. One, I think we have to say, and Willie O'Connor against Beau Greaves. Obviously, Beau Greaves undefeated in the women's series this year, nearly undefeated in all competition. This will be the first time we see her play against men in the PDC, and she drew a very tricky first-round tie. Willie O'Connor, the first half of the year, was struggling. Probably the first time in a few years that he really was struggling. But in the end, he started to look like the Willie O'Connor that's nearly a top 32 player and has been nearly a top 32 player for a few years. He finished as the 10th qualifier, despite for some time looking like he could miss out on the World Championships, because Willie O'Connor really is a very good player. But so is Beau Greaves. And that is, I think, a matchup that, they both could average well north of 100, and it really wouldn't be that surprising. They both could then beat Gabriel Clemens. But Gabriel Clemens has also been playing fairly well the last few months. That is a tricky trio of players. If I'm Gabriel Clemens, I'm not happy with that draw. If I'm Willie O'Connor, I'm not happy with that draw. If I'm Beau Greaves, I'm not happy with that draw, because they each got a very difficult player to go against, and it's going to be whoever comes through of those three will be a very deserving player to reach the third round. A couple other first round ties that are interesting. At the other end, Neil Zonneveld against Louis Williams. That is a very, very important match for tour card purposes. Neil Zonneveld right now is just outside the tour card spots. Louis Williams is barely inside it. Louis Williams is currently 60th in the post-World Championship order of merit, but I don't think he's safe. I think a win would, in essence, put him safe. But I don't think he's safe, because all Adam Gavlas needs is a win. All Jeff Smith needs is a win. All Keegan Brown needs is a win. And then suddenly Louis Williams is 63rd. Neil Zonneveld would need 2. So would Jim Williams and a couple other people. But it's not that unfathomable to see a couple of those players get 2, and suddenly Louis Williams is 65th or 66th. Neil Zonneveld, a win might not be enough, but a win is at the very minimum necessary for him. That's a very key match because at least one of those players probably will not be on tour next year, possibly both, depending on results. And that makes it a match to watch. Just a couple other first round ties, though, that I'm looking forward to. Matt Campbell, Danny Baggish. Baggish was playing very well at the end of the year. It took him 21 months to find his feet, or 20 months to find his feet as a tour card holder, but he was getting results pretty much every Players' Championship over the last couple months. He's looking a good player, and the winner of that gets Mervyn King in what could be a very tasty second round tie. And one more first round match, Ryan Joyce, who just came through the PDPA qualifier, which we'll talk about in a second, going against Scott Williams, who's been, despite not having a tour card, one of the emergent players this year. That's a very tricky match, and the winner gets Rob Cross, and Rob Cross cannot be happy with that draw because both of them can beat him, especially since Ryan Joyce is playing really well right now. Yes, he had to go to the PDPA qualifier, but he won through that. He was the first player out in the in the Pro Tour order of merit. He also won a couple matches at the Players' Championship final. He missed some Euro Tours that he qualified for. Otherwise, he would have been in the World Championships. He's a player that, even though he went to the PDPA qualifier, can't say it was all that bad of a year, even if it was a disappointing one for him. But that's a first-round tie to look forward to. As far as some other seeds that have difficult potential matchups, I mean, obviously these players might not get through their first round match, but Daryl Gurney potentially going against Alan Suter, who has really come back into his own the last few months. We just talked about him on our last show, about his run to the quarterfinals at the Grand Slam, and had he been able to hit double 18 his favorite, probably we would have been saying run at least to the semifinals of the Grand Slam. Callan Ritz potentially going against Josh Rock, one of the matches where I think the seed will be not the favorite. Ritz has not had the same year as he had last year, but did just make a major quarterfinal at the Players' Championship finals. And I mean, he absolutely can beat Josh Rock, but that is a very difficult tie. And I'll mention just one more. Gary Anderson potentially going against Matters Razma in the second round. If you remember 2 years ago, that was a second round matchup. Matters Razma got through his first round before going out to Gary Anderson in the second round. But Razma had chances. He had chances to win that match. Just missed too many set darts and ended up losing 3-1 in the end. But for much of that match, he looked the better player. Razma was a better player than he was 2 years ago. Gary Anderson, I'm not going to say he's a worse player than he was 2 years ago, but he hasn't been getting the results, and now looking set to drop out of the top 16 if he doesn't have a run here, potentially out of the top 20. That's a tricky tie. That said, Razma has been struggling recently, but what better way to get back on form than to avenge a defeat from 2 years ago? Razma is a very good player. If he can get back on form, he has every chance to upset the two-time world champion.
A lot of good ties in there, and I've got to say, if you hadn't have mentioned that Matt Campbell, Danny Baggish game, I would have been very surprised, because it is not often that we see two players from North America draw each other in the World Championship, and we've got quite a few North Americans in the draw, one extra after Jeff Smith won through the PDPA qualifier, and we'll talk about that in a moment as well. But just, I guess, going from the top to the bottom of the draw, looking through the ties that really stood out for me in the first round, and yeah, the Willie O'Connor Beau Greaves game is definitely one that's jumped off the page. Just before that, we had Adam Gavlas and another player that came through that last chance qualifier, Richie Bennett as well. That's one that's caught the eye for me. I guess one of the youngest players against one of the oldest players in the draw, and we're going to get that as well with Steve Beaton continuing his record run of World Championship appearances, going up against Danny Van Tripe, who is one of the players doesn't have a tour card at the moment, but looking pretty good at the moment to get one after Scott Williams had a few wins at the weekend in the Players' Championship finals, but not 100% guaranteed at the moment. Other ties that have caught the eye for me, and one that I've got to mention, is Roby John Rodriguez against Lawrence Alagan. We know Roby's ties with the Philippines, and Roby's been one of the standout players from the players outside the top 32 players that have got a new tour card for this year. So that's a tie I'm looking forward to. And another one as well I'll give a mention to, and it is Karol Sidlarczyk, a player that's looking to get their tour card, maybe outright getting the top 64 by the end of the year. I think he's probably going to need 2 wins minimum to get in there, and he's going up against one of the hardest international qualifiers in Raymond Smith, and the winner of that goes up against Dirk van Dijvenbode. So that's a little section of the draw that is going to be very tough for either player there. And just looking at potential second round ties, and we should give a mention to a few of the big boys, if you like. Going Price, the top seed, will play either Luke Woodhouse or the Ukrainian qualifier, first player from Ukraine to qualify for the World Championship, Vladislav Omolchenko, if I've said that correctly. Michael Smith, the Grand Slam champion, he'll play either Jermaine Watmina or Nathan Rafferty. Peter Wright, the defending champion, he'll play either Mickey Mansell or Ben Robb, and then the last of the big four, if you like, you mentioned, they're going to play each other, Neil Sonneveld and Louis Williams for the right to play Michael Van Gerwen, and a few other potential second round ties I'll give a mention to. Dave Chisnall, we could see him go up against Andrew Gilden. That would be a repeat of a Euro Tour final this year. We could have Kim Hybrex against Keane Barry. I mentioned the Roby John Rodriguez game. The winner of that will play Dimitri Vandenberg. You mentioned the Josh Rock Callum Ridds game, and we think back to last year's World Championship, Callum Ridds having that incredible run, getting to the quarterfinals and pushing the eventual champion Peter Wright all the way to a ninth set. Of course, he did have one of the best sleeves in the game back then. He was wearing the Weekly Dartscast logo, but you'd say probably going to go up against Josh Rock in that second round game. That is a very tough game. And you mentioned the Scott Williams game there as well. And Scott and Rob, of course, have become very good friends on the tour this year. So if Scott gets through that one, those two going up against each other is going to be one to watch as well.
Now we'll move to our first of two interviews on this episode, and that is with Fallon Sherrock, who spoke with Hanna at the World Championship media launch.
I'm joined today by Fallon Sherrock, the reigning women's world match play champion. Hi, Fallon.
Hi, you alright?
We're talking at the media launch of the Cazoo World Championship. What is it like to be part of an event like this to help launch what is arguably the biggest tournament in all of darts?
No, it's an amazing, feeling to actually be back at the World Championships anyway. I'm just really excited. Can't wait to get up there. There's more hunger this year anyway, after going out first round last year. So I was like, yes, right, come on, this year. Third time lucky, you're going to go on a better run.
And we'll come back to the Worlds in a minute, but when we last spoke, it was just at the Winter Gardens, obviously after you won.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I was the American at the very end. In the days and weeks that followed after that, how did you reflect on winning that tournament?
Do you know what? I was actually so proud of myself because obviously it's the first time I've played in a women's competition for so long, especially on a stage. Like usually it'd be like Lakeside or something like that, and I'd always kind of falter at the end and all that. So I was really proud of myself, and I kind of boosted myself up with confidence and stuff like that to actually come home and with the massive trophy in my boot that we couldn't even fit in the boot, that we had to kind of take all the bags out and shove it on people's laps in the back, and it was just, looking at the trophy, and it's just so, I don't even know how to put it into words because I just feel so proud of myself, and because it means a lot to me, because obviously it's the first major title that I've won playing in a field with all the women who, it was the top 8 at the time, and that's an achievement in itself.
And then a few weeks after that, you were headed off down under for the World Series triple header, ones that you'd been invited to in 2020, and obviously COVID happened and prevented that. Obviously didn't go the way you'd want to. However, what is that experience like, being a world away and experiencing those darts tournaments there? Yeah,
no, it was definitely a different environment and stuff like that over there. They love their darts and stuff like that, but it isn't as big over there as what it is over here. Especially in Australia, New Zealand was they love their darts as well, but it was so weird to kind of be on the other side of the world, trying to play darts and stuff like that, and he was like, but I want to go see a kangaroo, I want to go see this, I want to go see that, and I was like trying to do all of that and play darts at the same time and all of that, but it was so different to kind of see how different parts of the world, like even in the whole World Series, how different parts of the world, how they have the interest in darts, because you can see from one point to the other how people are interested, but more places are more interested than others.
And then obviously while you're away you had to miss Germany because you're down under. I would take a kangaroo over Germany, I have to do both. What was your reaction when you saw that Beau had made it to the final of all 4 of her matches and won them all?
So I think it was kind of expected. I'll be honest, I genuinely said I reckon Beau will probably end up winning all of them, and then I had people going, no, don't be silly, leaves it there and all that, and I'm like, do not underestimate Beau, and obviously then she went and won 4, and I was like, told you so. But then in hindsight it kind of backfired on me a little bit, because I did miss Germany, and if I had gone Germany, I think at the end of it I'd missed out just over £1,000. So I genuinely think if I'd have gone Germany, I'm not saying I would have won all of them, but I genuinely think I would have picked up £1,000 over 4 competitions, and then going into Wigan, I wouldn't have felt so pressured.
And obviously, her run of titles continued that final weekend of the women's series, and you went up against each other in the finals on the final day. And what a game.
Yeah.
Attention rife for even people watching. Can't imagine trying to throw a dart at that stage, to be honest. Obviously, a lot going into that. Whoever won second on the order of merit. Could you just feel that game felt more important, felt like more pressure ahead of time?
Yeah, no, to be fair, I really enjoyed that game. I thought we both played well in that game. I definitely, when I have something to play for and stuff like that, that's when I really play. So I think, we both done really well in that, and, you could definitely feel the tension, the pressure and stuff like that, and it was, it was a great game to be part of.
And obviously, recently I've spoken about that weekend, and a few people have spoken about it, there was a noise in the arena after Beau hit the 148, which rarely happens in floor events, as it's not allowed to happen in floor events. How surprised were you that had happened, and did it throw off your game at all?
Yeah. No, 100%. I'm not going to beat around the bush or anything like that. I mean, you can see in the last leg it threw me completely, because I just weren't expecting it. I was expecting, to be fair, when Beau had 148, I was like, do you know what, she's capable of taking this out. I wasn't surprised when she took that out, but I was more surprised with the reaction, considering the game hadn't even finished yet. So yeah, no, I just thought, after that it kind of affected my last leg and stuff like that, and I just thought, I should have more experience in that, more experience to not kind of let things like that get to me, like coming away from that weekend. But next time I kind of know what to expect, whereas at the time I kind of didn't.
And obviously at that point, with her finishing second on the order of merit, did you just think, well, there's the world's gone? Yeah,
pretty much. When you go on being on a high, then a low, and then a high, and it's like an emotional roller coaster. And then obviously, I thought, that's it, that's the world's gone. You go back to the drawing board, you kind of regroup and stuff like that. I was like, I'll just start off for next year now.
And then on Monday of last week, the PDC announced that they were adding the Women's World Match Play winner to the list of international qualifiers starting this year. When did you become aware that was going to happen?
Probably about an hour before they released it, to be honest. My manager rang me and stuff like that and told me, and obviously they're not, this is what I was about, an emotional roller coaster. I was down here, then I was up here, and I was like, oh my god, really, in disbelief and all that. And he told me, and he was like, just turn off your phone. And I was like, okay. Turn off my phone, and then obviously when I turned it back on, it was like bing, 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 bing. I was like, oh no, I should have just kept it off.
Well, from our standpoint, it seems a shame that having a third woman included in the World Championship, which should be celebrated, especially with having the new women's tournament, wasn't celebrated more at the time of the announcement. Just a personal standpoint, do you think it was just the timing of the announcement, maybe just closer to the match play would have been better, or do you just think it's just is what it is, I guess, that kind of vibe that some people have with darts?
Yeah, no, I think this is what a lot of people just kind of missed out. I think they've missed out on the point of it is 3 women there now. It was also announced, the prize money has been increased and stuff like that, but no one was actually bothered about that. I think, maybe the timing could have been a little bit better, but however, I'm quite happy they didn't announce it nearer the match play, because then obviously I then had to play at the max play as well. So it would not match play the Grand Slam, but then obviously the match play, it should kind of been said there if they were going to put it, but I don't make up the rules. I just kind of just play my darts and just stuff like that.
And obviously we're quite excited to see the increase in the prize money. Hopefully that'll draw more people out to the women's series as well. Obviously at the time that you had won at the Worlds, 3 years ago, we didn't get a chance to talk directly after that, but I did get a chance to talk with a few fellow darts players about what it meant for women's darts. And I don't think any of us could have predicted that the PDC, especially at the time, Barry Hearn told us that he considered being a woman akin to being left-handed, and that's your difficulty in darts. So did you feel or foresee that any of that might happen? Because I don't think any of us dare to dream, but I think we love that we see it there.
Yeah, no, I don't think, looking back at that, when all that happened anyway, I don't think I ever expected a women's series or anything like that, and to have that as a bonus and stuff, and now having extra money and more opportunities for the women and stuff like that, it's just amazing. But I think what really helped was the attention and the media behind everything and how it expanded, because then obviously then it started the whole like women in sport thing, and it just kind of showed everyone how much it meant. So I think that's why, you know, the women have all these opportunities and the women's series and stuff like that, because it is what, you know, now day and age want to see. They want to see women, they want to see women up against the men and stuff like that.
And obviously Beau's caught everybody's eye this year, but as a player and seeing who pushes you the hardest, who have you been impressed by or think that maybe have more potential coming through?
Yeah, so there's multiple people. I mean, obviously, you know, you've got Kate Sheldon, who I played at the match play. Like, she's still playing well and stuff like that. She probably will qualify at some point for these big events and stuff like that. 100%, I guarantee she's probably going to qualify for the match play again. You know, Makuru's playing well again, so she's like a little dark horse coming back as well. You know, you can't forget like Aileen, or even Anna's come back, and even though Lorraine hasn't, she literally keeps getting to the later stages, and I think she just missed out this year on getting like third, but she was so close and stuff like that. Like, there's so many other women that are coming through and stuff like that. This is why I keep kind of asking for more opportunities, more showboating and stuff like that, and it's only going to grow the women's game.
And away from the PDC, we've also seen that the ADC recently announced that they're doing a new women's championship tour, starting next year with the finals to be played on the live stream. What do you make of the ADC with their increasing of the involvement in the women's game?
Yeah, no, I think the ADC is like amazing thing to come on board as well, especially everything that's happened after the BDO and the WDF, because I mean, yeah, what the WDF still have their competitions and stuff like that, but how many times do they keep moving these world championships? But like, I think it's on in like January, I think, or they keep moving it or something like that.
Not in the first quarter of this year is what it's been announced.
Okay, well, this is what I mean.
But like 3 days ago.
Yeah, but this is what I mean, like, so it's always good for the women to have something else to play in. So then now they've got, you know, the women's series, they've got the ADC, just give them more, you know, more abilities to do stuff, and, you know, they can play in that and then go on to the live stream and all that and play on that, and that will grow their game in general. And, you know, the money's there, and I think the more money that gets thrown into the women's darts, the more that's going to just kind of like more eye candy to people and go, actually, there's more money here, I want to try and make a living for myself.
And with the WDF side of things, World Masters is next week. Have you considered playing in that?
No. I'll be brutally honest. I haven't played in any WDF events barring like 1 or 2 this year, and if it was 2, it was literally on the same weekend anyway. So I haven't really played in any, and looking at it, it's just my schedule's too busy anyway. I've got exhibitions and stuff in between now and the World Championships. The cost of going with the actual cost of winning, like the prize money doesn't, to me, I could go there, pay all that money and then win just over what I've paid out, and I was like, maybe if it was a bit higher, maybe I might go and stuff like that. But yeah, no, I think if the prize money was a bit higher, that I kind of be like, yeah, alright then, but I can't miss out on my exhibitions and stuff for it.
Would you ever consider the WDF Worlds again down the line, if kind of the same situation, if the prize money, if you knew when it was, sort of thing?
No, yeah, of course I would. I mean, I'd never like not think about playing in it or anything like that, because obviously it's great practice and stuff like that, and obviously I want to eventually be a world champion in the women's game as well. Like, there's nothing that I don't want to do, but obviously the timing of the last year or 2 years or something like that's just not been right, and I've been so busy, like a lot of the time it clashes. So maybe in the future, if I can, you know, go to more events and stuff like that, and if I qualify, if I don't qualify for Ali Pali, then I'll play in it. But, you know, I don't think I can play in both anyway, so.
And back to the PDC, the draw for the championship takes place later this evening. I'm sure you're not the first, that we won't be the first people to have mentioned, I'm sure you'll have considered it, that there is every possibility that with how the draw goes, you could draw Cameron.
Yeah, no, that's probably the worst case scenario. I mean, obviously everyone keeps saying about it, and I'm thinking, please stop jinxing it, like, touch wood, hang on, is there any wood in here? Like, yeah. But yeah, no, worst case scenario and all that, but there is a possibility, and let's just hope not.
If the worst were to happen and it were to come through, do you know how you guys would react to it? No practicing versus each other?
Yeah, I don't think we'd practice, and I think we'd kind of be like looking at each other from the other side of the room, like kind of eyeing up the competition for ages. I don't think we'd speak. No, I'm joking. But I think we'd probably have to like get a divorce and that afterwards.
Separation temporarily. And you've prepared for World Championships in the past with Women's World Championships and with Alexander Palace, obviously. How different is it getting ready for an event of that magnitude? Or is it just the same practice goes into it? Or do you put more hours on the board, different routine? Just how does that setup look?
So it is literally just putting in more hours between now and when it happens, because with like Lakeside and all that, at least you've got like a month or two notice. I've had like a couple of weeks notice, so like now it is literally hours on the board, practicing my finishing, my scoring, and most of it is match practice that I need, so that's what I'm going to be practicing the most.
And you made history with those 2 wins at LA Pally 3 years ago. But if we were to ask you what your favorite championship moment is, obviously it's that, but as a person who has watched darts, if we were to ask you what is your favorite World Championship moment, women's or men's, whichever code you wanted to choose from, what springs to mind for you?
Obviously it would be the one where obviously I got through the 2 rounds and stuff like that, but you know, I'm always going to remember my first Lakeside and all that when I got to the final against Lisa, and to me, you know, I remember my dad was there the first time he'd ever come watched and stuff like that, so that one's always like a memorable one for me as well.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for your time, Fallon.
Thank you.
Thanks to Fallon for speaking with us. Now we'll continue with our first World Championship preview show by discussing the PDPA Tour Card Holder Qualifier, which was on Monday afternoon, as Richie Burnett got through to his first World Championship in 9 years, and he was joined by Ryan Joyce, who was the first man out in the Pro Tour Order of Merit, as well as joined by Jeff Smith from Canada. What was your reaction for those 3 players and any others that you care to speak about from Monday's action?
This was a big day, wasn't it? Probably one of the most important days of non-televised darts that we have in the PDC, because as we've seen players, the last 3 spots in the World Championship were decided today, but for players that missed out on those 3 spots, of course, it does mean that for some of them, they have lost their tour cards, and some of them, of course, they'll go back to Q School at the start of next year and try and win them. And for some of them, we know that that'll probably be the end of the road as far as them playing on the PDC main tour. And one of those, of course, is Glenn Durran, 3-time BDO World Champion, Premier League champion, and someone that we've seen over the last few years, their game has dropped off from such huge heights that he had when he first joined the PDC. But he has come out today after he lost out in the qualifier and said that that's him as a professional player. He's going to move on to other things, but we will still see him play. We'll still see him involved in darts, which is great. And other players that we probably will see go back to Q School, Scott Mitchell, another former world champion, John Henderson, who only last year won that World Cup with Peter Wright for Scotland, Mr. Pure Darts, William Borland, who at last year's World Championship hit that 9-darter to win the game, completed darts. He's going to have to go back to Q School to try and get that tour card. And a few others who have been on the tour a bit longer, Jeffrey Desvan, Max Hopp, Steve West, so players that have been household names in recent years, they've got to go back to Q School to get their tour cards. But as far as the players that were able to get through that qualifier today and get the spots at Ali Pally, and I guess for the 3 of them, it is different things in their career, really. Ryan Joyce, he's got no concerns about losing his tour card. Richie Burnett, it's his first year with his new tour card, and pleased for him because we had him on the show earlier on in the year, and he said one of his big goals over these next 2 years, he was calling it his last dance in darts, is to get to Ali Pally, and he's done it in his first year. So yeah, for selfish reasons, I'm hoping that he is going to be playing on that opening night when I'm going to be there as a fan, so I get to see him play. And some great performances that he had today as well, a 95 average in his first round game, and almost 110, 109.98 in that game against Brian Rahman in the penultimate round. Brian Rahman averaging 104.75. It feels very unlucky, I'm imagining, for him not to win through that qualifier, and then coming through in the last round against Dave Evans. And probably out of the 3 players that have come through, you've got to say for Jeff Smith, it is the most important as far as where his career is at the moment, because if he hadn't have won through that qualifier, he would have been on that list of players that I started this answer with that would have had to go back to Q School to get their tour card, and getting through the qualifier today, I think it's put him up to 63rd on that provisional order of merit after the World Championship. So probably got to win one more game, or it's going to be a bit touch and go if he does stay in that top 64. But he had some great battles today. I mean, he was 5-3 down in his first round game against Jack Main, survived match darts and won that one. Another 6-5 win against Steve Lennon, a 103 checkout in the decider, and then in his last game a 7-1 win against Nick Fulwell. So he's had some good games in there, some battles. And you think of Jeff Smith the last few years as well, that the battles that he's had off the hockey with all the restrictions during the virus, all the hours of travelling, the hurdles that he's had to overcome. It'd be great for him if he could get another year on tour as the restrictions are continuing to ease, and hopefully we'll see his best stuff next year. But he's got himself a chance.
Yeah, mostly going to say much the same as you did there. A lot of names that now will be going back to Q School. You didn't mention a couple that probably will because they're still in the top 64, but didn't qualify. Joe Mernon nearly went out his first match, was 5-1 down or 5-2 down and came back and won it, but ended up going out in the last 24. Likely going to be back to Q School for him, a former winner on tour, which won a title when he didn't have a tour card. Ron Muhlenkamp, currently the last person in. He's been on tour for a few years now. I think he's made more semifinals than any player who's never made a PDC ranking final. Likely back to Q School now, as he's the last person in, and it's currently 64th. But Keegan Brown, Neil Zonneveld, Jim Williams, all they need is one win. A few other players need 2 wins to pass him. And then all those players who you mentioned, I'll also add in Andy Bolton, who's been on tour for a while now, and Jason Lowe, who really looked a very good player his first year on tour, but just hasn't met those same heights the last couple of years. Snuck into the World Championship as an alternate last year, didn't make it this year. Back to Q School for him. As far as though the 3 players who managed to win through and get to the World Championships, you did say that Ryan Joyce didn't have to worry about his tour card, and that's right. But he probably would have had to worry about his tour card next year because he didn't do that much this year. He only won the 24,000 pounds on the Pro Tour. Obviously, a good weekend in the Players' Championship finals, making it through to the last 16 is going to help. Also, run at the UK Open. So, he was still going to carry some money over, but not nearly what he did last year, not nearly what he'd done in previous years when he was closing in on the top 32. Now he's just in the mid-40s, getting to the World Championships. Even if he loses that first match, because as we talked about earlier, he has a brutal draw, just getting that extra 7,500 pounds could be very vital in 12 months to make sure he stays on tour. Obviously, after the last few years, his goal is to do a lot more than just stay on tour. It's to get back into the major championships, but getting to the World Championship is a huge first step for that. As far as Jeff Smith, you mentioned, this gives him a chance to save his tour card. I said on the last time we recorded, I said a few times this year, that it's been a difficult couple of years because of COVID for Jeff Smith, more so than almost any other player because of how far he's had to travel. And I think that took its toll. I think he's a better player than just struggling to get through the PDPA tour card qualifier to stay on tour. He is a top 64 player, maybe even a top 48 player when he's being able to play the full schedule without the inconvenience of global pandemic restrictions affecting his travel. I think if he's able to get that win and stay on tour, we'll see him stay there for a few years because he's a good player. And getting through, I think, is obviously huge because it gives him that chance. It's in his hands now to save his tour card. And you mentioned Richie Burnett, definitely the most surprising of the 3. He had been one of the lowest players in terms of money won this year of anyone on tour before this, well, it's not one of the lowest, but on the lower end, and that's why he was at the PDPA qualifier. But dominant performance, averaged nearly 115 for most of his semifinal. A bad last leg led that drop to 109.99, but still the performance of the day. And then was well up in the final. Let his opponent get a little bit back into it, but just really I was going to say roll back the year's performance, but I don't remember him averaging 110 before. Just a fantastic performance that I don't think anyone, probably not even he, saw coming. And that's why he's now in the field and giving himself something to build on for next year because, well, next year is when he's going to have to do better to save his tour card.
And now move on to our next guest on this week's show. He's one of the international qualifiers. He won the Indian Qualifier to get a debut at the World Championship this year. Here's our chat with Prakash Jiwa. I'm pleased to say I'm joined by the Indian Qualifier for this year's PDC World Championship, Prakash Jiwa. Thanks for the time, Prakash. How are you doing?
I'm very good, thank you very much, Alex.
Good to hear. And we're still talking less than 2 weeks since you won that Indian Qualifier to secure your debut at the Ali Pali. What have the last 2 weeks been like for you since winning that qualifier? Is it fully sunk in net that you'll be playing at the World Championship?
Well, it's absolutely amazing, tell you the truth. I mean, it's a dream come true. I've just been inundated with like good luck messages and messages from all around the world as well. And I think people are glad to see me actually playing on stage representing India. So yes, it's been marvellous.
Good to hear. And we'll come back to the qualifier later, but I read on Facebook you said you dreamt of playing in a World Championship since you started playing darts 35 years ago. So let's go back to the start for you in darts. How and when did you get introduced to the game?
Well, I started off at the young age of 17. I went to the local working men's club, and just like there was a set of darts on the board, I pulled them out and just started playing. And then, this is nice. This is quite an easy game. And then I got asked to play against somebody. I said, I've never played darts before. But they said, it's easy. We'll help you do the chalking and everything. Just put your name on and then mark the board and we'll show you. I said, I'm not good at taking away or anything. And I've never played darts before. He said, we'll show you. So I went to the local working men's club and found myself beating the locals. I thought, this is all right. And then eventually I bought myself a set of darts, just cheap £4.99 darts, and I found myself getting invited to play in other leagues. I enjoyed the practice, so I was practicing down the local working men's club, the rugby workers club, literally 3 or 4 hours every day. I started to win titles at a young age of 18. Found myself then being invited to play for Rugby Super League, again at 18, I think, or 18 or 19. From there, my results were very good playing for the Super League. Then I got invited to play for Warwickshire County, which again, back in the day, representing the county was a very big honour, and it still is. Because like 35 years on, I'm still playing for Warwickshire County. So that's how I sort of started, really.
And I guess from there, it wasn't until your 40s we saw you first qualify for the UK Open and then coming through Q School when that was first introduced a year or so later. So what was it about those events when they came in that made you want to maybe push yourself a bit further in darts and try the PDC out?
Well, you played county for a number of years, and then the PDC come along, and it was like you watch it on TV and you think to yourself, I can do what they do, let's give it a go. And if you're good enough in the PDC, in the qualifiers, and you get through, you're regarded as in the top 128 in the world. And I managed to do that. And I got to play my heroes like Bill Taylor and Gary Anderson and Raymond Barnabell. So the first year was a bit of a learning curve for me because I'm in awe of these people, watching them on TV. And now I'm actually playing alongside them. I'm in the same tournament as them. So once that, I got over the fact that these players are going to be there, my next task was to make myself a name and beat these players, which I was capable of doing, and I actually did manage to win a few games, which then gives you confidence. So then as the years go on, you become more and more confident and you establish yourself a name, and you're not frightened of these players anymore. You're more of a dart player, and you're going there to earn yourself a living and make yourself a name. And that's what I was doing. That's the confidence I had going into these games. So to start with, yes, I was just like in all of these people, and then in time, I'm thinking, I can beat you. And I was beating them, so you're very good.
Well, you mentioned as well playing for Warwickshire. It was through Warwickshire that how you got into the UK Open, your first taste of a PDC major in 2010. And I was looking back at that event. There was no Riley's qualifiers back then, but the PDC offered a spot to each county that voted in favour of them discussing the PDC's offer to buy the BDO. So how did it work you getting the spot? Was it based on performances, or was there a qualifier to get that spot?
No, there was a qualifying spot for that position which Warwickshire held, and I remember going through the field, and I think a Warwickshire A player at the time. I remember going through the field and beating some of the County B players and some of the County A players, and I still remember in my final I beat a guy called Mark McGee, who's been also on the PDC and in the BDO as well, World Championship. So that was a great honour for me to actually beat him and then represent Warwickshire in the UK Open. And that's where I got my first chance to meet Eric Bristow as well. Eric Bristow was giving a talk to all the qualifiers. So again, another one of my heroes, which I've only ever seen on TV. Managed to see him live and come and talk with him.
And we have to ask, what did Eric say to you and all the other qualifiers?
Well, one thing I remember specifically is it was Keith Deller actually and Eric. But Eric was saying, and it's a point which I still managed to live up to today. And he says, get yourself ready for that first game. If you need 10 points, get 10 points down your neck. Now, me as a dart player, I've never drank 10 points in my life. But he says, get yourself right. You need 3 points, then get 3 points. Because if you don't get yourself ready for that first game, you will not be in the tournament. And I live by that today. You've got to get yourself ready for that first game. Because if you don't win that first game, you're out of the tournament. Very good advice.
Definitely, yeah. Well, you had the UK Open, and then as we mentioned, 2011, the first Q School, you get through that, and 2012, your second year with a tour card, the PDC introduces the European Tour, which we've seen how big that's got now. You played in the very first one, winning through the qualifiers, facing James Wade on that first evening out in Austria. What was it like getting to experience the PDC stage and being a part of that event?
Well, yes, so I've never experienced anything like that playing in front of a crowd, but to play James Wade on the main stage in front of like 2,000-3,000 people, I'll be lying if I say I wasn't nervous, but once I got into it, once I got into the match, I was feeling good, and I thought I played very well. I think James beat me 6-3 on that occasion, and took out some big checkouts against me, so I managed to play to a good level, and just his finishing that was great on that particular occasion. But I liked it. The crowd was lovely as well. No one was booing me, which was a good thing.
Since then, you've been successful 2 more times at Q School, 2015 via the Order of Merit, 2017 you got the job done on the first day, and at the time you were only the 5th player to have won a tour card 3 times at Q School. But just how tough is Q School to get through?
It's getting tougher, and it was getting tougher and tougher each year. I'm not saying that the first time wasn't tough. There's some extremely good players when I played along the first Q School. There was people like Dave Chisnell there, John Henderson, people like that at Q School on the first one that I went to. I mean, they've gone on to become superstars, but each year or every time you qualify or try to qualify now, you hold a tour card for 2 years and you have to go back. It's getting tougher and tougher. I think when I went, there was like 140, I think, players to try and get through. Now you're going through nearly 300, 400 players at these events, and they're all very good. So it's getting tougher and tougher each year to qualify. But once you do qualify, the rewards are there.
You dropped off the tour at the end of 2018, and we've obviously had some long breaks since then with the pandemic, but you've still played Q School, the Challenge Tour. Did you take any breaks from darts at all, or have you always kept the practice up and carried on playing when there were no events on?
No, I've kept practicing at home and going to, during the pandemic, I went to Q School and we was isolated at Q School, and I had to stay in a hotel because I managed, because there's 2 phases now to Q School. You have to go through a 3-day, like a qualifier before you head to the 128 to try and get a tour card from there. So I had a board and I was practicing in my hotel room. So the pandemic gave me a lot of time to actually practice as well, and I've got a board at home, so I do a lot of practicing at home. But I don't like the actual online darts. You play against somebody online on a computer. I don't think that's real practice for me. Actually playing somebody or actually just practicing on my own will give me more time to practice.
Well, let's get on to this year. We've seen a lot more events come back this year, including the Riley's qualifiers for the UK Open, which you won one of them, and me and my colleague Matthew Keenan, we were in the multi-board room for that first afternoon of the UK Open. We could hear the cries of Jiwa, Jiwa. How much did you enjoy being back in a major event like that again?
Oh, it was incredible, because I just went on the off chance there was a qualifier in Coventry. I've been there, done it, got the T-shirt. I had no intentions of going back to, because I've done the UK Open sort of thing. I've had some good memories, and it was just on the off chance my wife was away somewhere and I had nothing to do on that particular Sunday, and so I entered, I think the night before, and I went and met with a few people from rugby. We went on the train, we went over to there, and I thought I'd give it a go, and I found I played not too good to start with, but as it got on, as the tournament went on and I was winning, I was playing better and better. And then I found myself in the quarterfinals, and I managed to win that, I think 4-0, something like that. And I played the semi-finals, which I think I won 5-1. And then when I played the final, I was even in better form, and I beat somebody, Stephen Rice or someone, and I played really well. And I managed to qualify. So I'm thinking, great, you know what I mean? It was a great opportunity for me to be back at the UK Open again. When I played, it was in Bolton. I started off in Burton, but then we went to Minehead. So I've been to Minehead before, but I didn't have a happy experience the first time because it took us like 6-7 hours. And there was snow warnings and things like that. We shouldn't have really attended because it was freezing there. But I managed to go this time, and it was a lot better.
Well, you've become the king of the qualifiers this year, because let's get on to the Indian Qualifier for the World Championship. And looking back on your Twitter, I think in 2018 when you had a tour card, you said you weren't allowed to represent India in the PDC World Cup unless you were a resident for 2 years. That's going back obviously a few years now, but when did the option of going to India to play in the qualifier materialise for you?
It only happened this year. I think the PDC changed some of the rules and regulations, and it stated that if you was a citizen or dual citizen of a country, you was eligible to play. And I had a contact in India who contacted me and said, would I be interested? Of course, it's been always one of my dreams to actually play darts in India. I said, okay, if you're happy for me to play, let me just find out from the officials from the PDC over here. So I spoke to Alan Warriner, very helpful. He spoke to Matt Porter, in charge of the PDC, and it was all agreed that, yes, I am eligible to play because I hold a dual citizenship for India, which I've held for almost 8 or 9 years now. But it only come available this year that I was eligible to play. So me and my wife decided to go to India and see, look, if you're good enough, you're going to win. If you're not good enough, then at least you've tried. And all I wanted to do was try. I tried, and I was very fortunate to get through.
Yeah, it definitely paid off. The final almost went all the way. You raced into a 5-0 lead against Nitin Kumar before he won the next 4 legs. He missed darts to take it all the way. What was going through your head as you watched Nitin miss those darts for 5-all and you stepped up with a chance to close out the game?
Well, it was very tough because I started the match off. We played just previous to that. We had a mini tournament on the Saturday called the IDF State Championships, and I managed to get to the final in that, and I played Nitin on the stage over there, and it was a good game, very high scoring game, and he beat me 5-3. I'm thinking this was up on the stage, and the stage wasn't very good because the floorboards were crackling and everything, so it was off-putting a little bit. Because on the floor I was playing some really good darts. I was doing 11, 12, 13 darters on the floor, and I wasn't able to do that on the stage because of the floorboards, etc. So he beat me 5-3, and I'm thinking, okay, that's fine. It's just a little bit of a warm-up. On Sunday, we're on different halves of the draw, and sure enough, we met each other in the final. But this time it was over a longer format, best of 11. So best of 11 is what I'm used to, what I enjoy playing. And when I raced, to start, my finishing was great, which allowed me to get to a 5-0 lead. Of course, then you start thinking, because then heavy dart throwing then is your dreams are going to come true. And you start thinking, and the more you think, the more you miss. I did have opportunities to close the match out, but I think, the pressure, I'll be lying, I said the pressure it hit me hard, and it did, and it told as well, because it was all on the wire, but not in, and I kept thinking to thought, it's not meant to be. It's not meant to be. And then when he got to 5-4, and I got myself into a winning position, and I left the double, Nitin still had the chance to make it 5-all, and I think he had the darts in the last leg. And I was just give me one more chance, just give me one more chance. And sure enough, he gave me that one more chance. I took a deep breath, and luckily went in on the second dart. Just a big relief.
And we saw on the stream as well how pleased you were after winning the game. The double goes in, you'd secured your spot at Ali Pali. What does it mean to you to be making your debut in the biggest tournament in darts and at the age of 52 as well?
It's absolutely massive, and I've got to thank my sponsor, Cazoo, who in March, while I was at the UK Open, offered me a contract to make my darts and give me a contract to do my stems and everything, and I was so chuffed about that. And the darts that they've actually personally made for me has made a massive difference, absolute massive difference. It's not only given me the confidence, but it's given me the right tools to be able to do the job, because I've always been able to play darts, always. But I think having the right equipment is a very big thing. And thanks to QSOL, they've made the darts to my specifications, and they've been working wonders.
Certainly have, and we know in darts, age is just a number. You're the same age as the reigning world champion and until just recently world number one Peter Wright. So what has been the biggest motivation for you though to keep going, push for these achievements like qualifying for the World Championship?
Well, you see all these youngsters now throwing like 9 darters like they're out of fashion and things like that, and like you say, age is just a number. I'm still fit, I'm still able, and yes, I can still hit 100 averages, and that's what you need now. If I wasn't able to hit them, I don't think I'd be getting the success that I've been getting at the moment. But because I am still hitting these 100 averages, every now and again, it's allowed me to, it's opened up a lot of new paths for me. And I've loved playing darts, and I enjoy playing darts, so I'm going to keep on playing darts as well. And whatever success it brings me still, then I'm just going to jump on that bandwagon.
2 more before we let you go. Wikipedia's got your walk-on down as Apache by the Sugar Hill Gang, a nod to your nickname Apache. Will you be sticking with that for Ali Pali, and how much are you looking forward to walking out to play in your first World Championship?
Right, the thing is, I'm having a few deliberations now, because there's a song called Punjabi MC, which I think the crowd would absolutely love, and it's a good catchy tune. I think the crowd would love it. I love the tune, and I think I might change my walk-on music to that, because I think I'm excited to be at the World Championships. I'm going to enjoy going on that stage, playing in front of the thousands of people that are going to be there watching, and TV cameras, and it's about the audience as well. If they're in a good mood, they'll be on your side, and if there's a good catchy tune, then I think I might go with that.
That's fair enough. And lastly, before we let you go, looking a little bit further ahead, we've seen you play a little bit of the World Seniors, the Modus League, but after the World Championship, what is going to be the next main goal for you? Is it to get another crack on the PDC Tour, or have you got your eye on something else?
No, I shall be going back to Q School in January, unless I make the semi-finals or the final of the actual World Championships, and I probably won't have to. But yeah, it's back to Q School for me. I've got the excitement of playing on the Modus as well, 2023. I've got the Seniors Tour to look forward to as well, and if I don't get my tour card, I've got the Challenge Tour as well. So there's a lot of darts coming up, and I'm looking forward to it.
Well, before then, it is going to be the big one, the World Championship. Congratulations again on getting through the qualifier, and we wish you all the best for that debut at Ali Pali next month.
Thank you very much appreciated.
Thanks again to Prakash for joining us, and we'll finish up our second of 2 shows this week with a listener question. Comes from Elliot, who says, with the World Championship coming up and Sky testing out some new features / camera angles, what one addition would you make to their coverage if you could? Personally, I'd love to see more in-studio guests like in other sports, but maybe there isn't time in the broadcast. You can also maybe make a change to an existing feature. It doesn't have to be a new concept.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I've had a thought, and I didn't come up with anything off the top of my head. One big thing I would have said 6 months ago was add Dan Dawson, and they only went and done that. we do see at the World Championships, they usually tend to add more features. The two that pop to mind is the best fancy dress at each session and the best things written on the 180 cards. And maybe there's a couple other things they've done before. And it does add a little bit. It's just a goofy little thing when they come back from an advert break to show what's going on in the crowd. But beyond that, I don't know what needs to be added. I mean, their coverage, especially in the last couple of years, has improved significantly. Part of that is that the overall caliber of the commentary team has gotten better. Obviously, they've had Rod Studd, Wayne Martle, and John Part for a long time, and those three have all been fantastic. But adding in Mark Webster, adding in Dan Dawson, now, Corey Hammond's been getting involved recently as well. We've seen, and Laura Turner, we've seen just an overall increase in the caliber of the commentary team and less having to utilize people who may be very good commentators but don't follow darts. That darts isn't their main sport, and they just sort of thrown in because there's so many matches. And that makes a difference. It makes just the overall experience so much better when you have people that know what's going on day in, day out on the tour. Obviously, current and former players are going to know what's going in day in, day out on the tour because they are going to follow it. But, that's something that people might overlook about Rod Studd, is that Studd follows the darts. And I think that the fact that there's more commentators who really do know what's going on at the Pro Tours and the Euro Tours has made a big difference. I don't know what I would add. I like the suggestion. I think this is a really good question. It's something that I think I'm sure they're always brainstorming, and I'd love to hear what our listeners have to say. But I think Sky's coverage has really improved significantly over the last couple of years, and there's nothing that immediately comes to mind that I think they should add or do that much differently to make the coverage any better. I think they've been doing a very good job, and they should be applauded for the quality of their coverage the last couple of years.
I've got to agree with that, and I think probably Sky at the moment, I know there's not many broadcasters based in the UK that are showing darts at the moment, but I'll probably say Sky are the ones that are leading the game at the moment. And you mentioned Dan Dawson there, who had that. We had him on the show quite recently, and we spoke to him about his call up to Sky this year as part of their broadcast, and he mentioned that there's not a lot of time in the broadcast to do loads of different things when you compare it to a sport like football. And he mentioned this, you've got a lot of time for build up and a lot of time for analysis afterwards. It's one game you're looking back on, whereas with the darts you can often have 8 games during a session, or if it's a World Cup and you've got multiple games during that session, then it's a lot more, and it is pretty much bang bang onto the next game. But one of the things that I mentioned, this is one of the questions that we had a couple of weeks ago, and I did reply to it on Twitter as well, and I said, for me, one of the big things I'd like to see is Sky maybe utilise their digital platforms, social media a bit. And okay, I guess this is a little bit away from the broadcast, but for me, I think the big tournaments, talking the World Championships, the World Match Plays, I think every player that wins a game on that stage should get an interview from the broadcaster. And I know due to time constraints that maybe sometimes can't be done on the broadcast, but still get them for an interview with the reporter. They usually have a reporter there for every session doing interviews with the bigger names, get them involved, chatting to the other players that win, and you can post them out on social media, maybe play them in other places as well, like the website as well. And it's getting the players out there, getting their personalities out there, I think is a big thing for me. And I remember I don't know why it came to me. I know he's your favourite player, Burton, but Mark Walsh, I remember he won a game at a World Championship. This is going back a few years now, but he had an interview with Sky, and I think the interview was taking place while the next game was going ahead, so you could just hear the interview. And I think Mark signed off by saying, yeah, I'll speak to you again in another 3 years or something like that. It was a comment like that, but you see players often, you don't hear from them on the Sky broadcast, but they're players that are regularly winning games in those Sky events. So for me, I think I'd like to see that would be a feature that I'd bring in, and maybe going back to the old days of the players in the studio afterwards, 5-6 minute interviews, probably something we won't see again. But I used to look forward to that. As when I first started watching darts on Sky, you'd have your Phil Taylors, your Raymond van Barnevelds, Colin Lloyds, Kevin Painters. They'd be up on that stage for an hour, and then they'd go to in studio with Dave Clark for 5 or 6 minutes chatting to him, and you'd get a really good insight from Dave and the players back then. But yeah, again, maybe it is a timing issue, but if we can't have that, let's get all the players interviewed and maybe develop the digital platforms and again, get the characters of the players out there a little bit more.
Anything else for this week?
Well, we should say big thank you to our guests on this show, to Fallon and Prakash for joining us, and thanks again to Hanna for her help in being a part of the media launch for us, representing us. Thanks to the PDC, to Dave Allen as well for hosting us, to our sponsor Dartwolf. If you want more Dynamite Darts content, head on over to dartwolf.tv, give Dartwolf a follow at Dartwolf180, and as we were part of the media launch, we should mention that the Cazoo World Darts Championship can be watched exclusively live on Sky Sports from December 15th to January the 3rd. So not long to go until we can all enjoy darts again and Dartsmas begins. But we will have probably one or two more episodes before then of the show. And if there is anyone that you'd like us to get on, whether that be a player, a pundit, a manager, anyone involved in darts who's going to be involved in the World Championship, or you just want to hear from them before it all gets underway, do get in touch with us. We do have one or two lined up for the next week or so, but of course there is always space for more. So if there's a player or anyone you want to hear from, do let us know, and we'll do our best to bring them to you on the show before it all gets underway.
Yes, indeed. It is the best time of the year. It is the World Championships. I can't believe it's the 6th time that we'll be getting ready for the World Championships on this show. But I'm hanging tight, and I'm enjoying the darts, and I'm just everything. Thank you guys all for another fantastic year. As Alex said, let us know if there's anyone in any way associated with darts and with the World Championships that you'd like us to try to get on. We'll do our best. I'm just at a loss for words. I'm so excited now. Just another 2 weeks to go. Hang tight, and then enjoy the darts, and then enjoy the darts some more. It is finally Dartsmas.